We've already seen how we can do cross-table lookups by using nested lookups, one lookup inside another. And we showed this exact same example using a HLOOKUP inside a VLOOKUP. So the HLOOKUP was looking the column number up and returning that into a VLOOKUP so that we could then look up the correct month to get the correct column value. Now, an alternative way of achieving what pretty much is exactly the same result is to use two other functions. These are index and match. Now, an index allows you to look up cross-tabular wise. So if we were to take our spend value here, we could use the index function equals index, open brackets. It requires an array, tabular array there. I can highlight my table, column, then a row number. So at the moment, if I were looking for May, I would pick on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So row 7, comma, and then a column number. Well, I'm looking for sales. That's 1, 2, 3, 3, close brackets, and return would give me 38,022. Let's make that formatted the same. So May sales 38,022. Now we see we get the correct result, but what's not happening is that our index function is not using the word May and the word sales to figure out which row and which column to actually go and collect. In order to do that, we need to use the match function in here to feed in the 7 for us by taking firstly the month of May and finding out where in the list it appears. So let's replace the physical 7 that we've had to type in with a match function. Now the match function takes a lookup value, in our case that's May, and goes and looks it up in an array, as all of our lookups do. Now our array for May is this set of rows here, and then comma. The last part is that it must be an exact match, so that's 0. We saw that in the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP that was false, whereas here in the match function it's referred to as 0. And then I close my round brackets. So this is again where the color code on the brackets is working fantastically. Red brackets for the match, and then black brackets for the index. So let's leave that match pulling in the month for the moment, and then we'll look at replacing the 3. We'll leave the 3 as a fixed value. So return, that gives me the same value. But what I can now do is type in a different month. So sep, return, and I'm given 5366. So we're coming down to September. Still looking at the sales column, so that's 5366. Excellent. The last step here then is to replace the 3 with another match function. It's actually going to take the sales department value, look that up in this array, comma, must also be an exact match, so that's 0. Close the round brackets for the match, giving me red ones, so I can see they match up, and the black round ones for index. The advantage here is I don't need to do that little trick that we did with the HLOOKUP, which is provide these 2, 3, 4, 5 values, because we actually looked up the name of the department and then moved to the second row to see which column number it was in. I don't need those row numbers anymore. Using match, match returns me the column reference, the array reference of the value that it's looking up. So it's looking up sales. It says that's cell 1, that's cell 2, that's cell 3. I found the word sales in cell 3. The same happens here with this match. This is looking up SEP in this range, looks down, starting here with its count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. So I'm in row 11, and then the index function takes that 11, the top 3, and looks inside my whole table, which is the blue area, and returns where those two IDs meet. So we're using human values of sales and SEP, then the functions to find out the array places, feeding those array numbers into our index function to give us the result we're after as a human being. This is actually a slicker result for doing multiple table lookups than doing a nested lookup. Return, and now I can use either of these dynamically, changing sales for operations. I'm given the September sales for operations. and it's working fine. I now no longer need this row of numbers. Delete those. Delete the cells. Move the cells up. And we'll find that these still work. Let's try Jan. Marketing. 42356. Of course, just like the V lookup and the H lookup, if a value doesn't actually exist in a list, then we'll get an hash NA. So if I were to change marketing for clerical, which is not an existing department, our end result ends up being NA. So we would need to do a little bit of tidying in our formula as well. It's the match that cannot find clerical. So what we'll do is we'll copy the match function and replace that with if, open brackets, is NA the match of that cell in that range, close the round bracket for the is NA, nice little purple ones, comma. If it is NA, then I'm just going to return a 0, actually return 1. If it's not, then comma, I want to paste back in my match function and then close the round brackets for the if. So you can see that they're color coded in red. If I then press return, I get hash NA because I've only checked on the B3, which is the department. Let's put clerical back to an existing department, sales, and change the month to a non-existent month. What about Tuesday? That's not an existing month. And you see that we get the value sales returned in here because we're returning a 1 into the first section. So it's returning me the value of 13, which is just sales. So that's not an NA. So let's do the same for the match of the second lookup. Copy. That we can then say this is if is NA that particular match. Then we will return a 1 again, comma, we'll return the lookup for the match, and then we close the if statement. So if the sales department gets changed to clerical, so both of these do not exist, see we end up with a little hyphen, which is actually the value of this cell here, because it's returning 1s. So it's 1, 1, that cell there. If one of them is wrong and the other isn't, for example, when we had sales, then it's returning 1 here, but it's still returning the correct column there, so we end up with sales. If we turn this on its head and go back to clerical, but a proper month, we'll then return the month name. Because clerical is given as a 1, but we're coming down to the correct row here. So that's much, much better than the NA issue, but look how much longer your function is. Having to embed the is NA and an if inside the same area just increases the size of it. So it really depends on, are you likely to get NAs? If you are, then it's a good thing to do. If not, then perhaps you don't want to make your formula so much more complicated. Back to the nuts and bolts. It's the match that matches the text value and turns the array number back. That array number is then fed into the index, and the index uses those numbers to look up in your main lookup table. It's an alternative to using nested V and H lookups.